Jack stood on the edge of the space station's observation deck, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. His mission was simple enough: observe alien species, take notes, and report back. He was stationed at a research outpost near an unknown galaxy, far away from Earth. The station was small, and the work was quiet until now. He looked down at his watch, checking the time. He wasn't expecting anything exciting. In fact, nothing had really happened in the past few weeks. But that was about to change. Jack's eyes moved over to the door as it slid open, and in walked his assigned alien companion. Zira. She was a member of a species called the Taurith, known for their intelligence and deep understanding of technology. Zira's appearance was like nothing Jack had ever seen before. Her skin was a shade of silver that shimmered in the station's lights. Her eyes, large and dark, seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken thoughts. She wore a sleek, form-fitting suit, which was typical for her species. Jack had been working with Zira for a few weeks now, and honestly, he didn't know what to make of her. She was always so calm, so controlled. It was almost like she wasn't human at all. Zira had a way of keeping her emotions hidden, always professional and distant. Jack had to admit it was hard to get a read on her. "Good morning, Jack." Zira's voice was soft and smooth, like velvet, but there was no warmth in it, just a professional tone that matched the way she carried herself. "Morning," Jack replied, trying his best not to sound too awkward. He had never quite gotten used to her cold demeanor. "Are we heading out?" Today, Zira nodded, her gaze never leaving his face. "Yes, the mission requires us to travel to a nearby planet. There have been unusual energy readings detected. We need to investigate." Jack felt a flicker of excitement. A new planet meant new discoveries, new adventures. It was why he had signed up for this job in the first place. But the thought of spending more time with Zira, who always seemed to be keeping him at arm's length, made him hesitate. He didn't mind working alone, but he understood that the mission required teamwork. "Well, all right then," Jack said with a half-smile. "I guess we'd better get going." Zira's expression didn't change. She turned on her heel, heading for the station's small shuttle bay. Jack followed her, his mind racing. He couldn't deny that there was something intriguing about Zira. She was brilliant, and her knowledge of the stars and planets was unmatched. But he couldn't help but wonder why she was always so distant. Was it just the way her people were, or was there more to it? The shuttle was small and sleek, built for fast travel between planets. Zira took the pilot's seat, while Jack settled into the seat beside her. The engines hummed to life as the shuttle lifted off, cutting through the silent vacuum of space. As they left the station behind, Jack tried to start a conversation. "So, what do you think we're going to find on this planet? Could be anything." Zira's eyes flicked to him briefly before returning to the controls. "The energy readings are unlike anything we've encountered. It's possible there's a power source we don't fully understand. We'll know more once we arrive." Jack nodded, but he couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. It wasn't that Zira was rude, but there was a wall between them. She was always so focused, so serious. It was like she had no interest in anything other than the mission. He, on the other hand, liked to talk, to connect with people. It was just who he was, but Zira, she didn't seem to want that connection. The journey to the planet was quiet, with nothing but the soft hum of the shuttle's engines filling the air. Jack leaned back in his seat, staring out the window at the endless stars. He had always found space to be beautiful, but also lonely. It was a strange feeling, being so far from Earth, surrounded by so much emptiness. The planet slowly came into view, a large blue and green orb, surrounded by swirling clouds. It looked peaceful from a distance, but Jack knew that appearances could be deceiving. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. This was what he lived for, exploring the unknown. Zira remained focused on the controls, but Jack could tell she wasn't as excited as he was. Maybe she was used to this. For her, it was just another day on another mission. They landed on the surface with a soft thud, the shuttle's thrusters kicking up dust as it touched down. Jack unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, ready for the adventure. But as he turned to look at Zira, he noticed something. For the first time, she seemed a little off. Her usually calm demeanor was slightly cracked, her eyes narrowed as if she was thinking deeply about something. "Everything okay?" Jack asked, his curiosity getting the best of him. Zero paused for a moment before looking at him. "Yes, just focused. We have work to do." Jack wasn't sure why, but the way she looked at him made his heart skip a beat. There was something different in her eyes, something almost human. But before he could say anything else, Zira was already out of her seat, heading toward the shuttle door. He quickly followed, trying to shake off the strange feeling that had settled in his chest. Maybe it was just the excitement of the mission, or maybe it was the mystery of Zira herself. Whatever it was, Jack couldn't deny that he was intrigued by her more than he cared to admit. As the shuttle door opened and they stepped out onto the foreign planet's surface, Jack knew this mission would be unlike any other. It wasn't just about discovering what lay ahead on the planet. It was about discovering something much deeper, something about Zira, and maybe even about himself. The surface of the planet was unlike anything Jack had seen before. The ground was covered in smooth, dark stones, while strange bioluminescent plants grew in scattered clusters. The air smelled fresh, yet heavy with the scent of unknown flowers. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence press against him. Zira led the way, her steps purposeful as she moved with the grace of someone who had been on countless missions. Jack followed closely behind, trying to keep up with her pace. She didn't seem to notice him lagging slightly, too focused on the task at hand. But Jack couldn't help but be distracted by the beauty of the place. He had never been to a planet like this, and the alien landscape felt both alien and familiar at the same time. "So, what exactly are we looking for?" Jack asked, breaking the silence. Zira glanced at him, her eyes flicking to his for just a moment before returning to the path ahead. "We're looking for the source of the energy readings. The scans suggest there's something beneath the surface. A power source. Maybe even a hidden facility." Jack nodded, trying to keep up with her. "Sounds like we're going to have a lot to explore then." Zira's pace didn't slow. "We'll need to be careful. The area is unstable. Some of the energy surges are causing shifts in the terrain." Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, but he didn't want to show it. Instead, he focused on keeping up with Zira, watching as she moved with confidence. She seemed so at ease in this strange place, so sure of herself. It was hard for Jack not to feel a little out of his depth. They walked for what seemed like hours, the terrain growing more treacherous with every step. The ground shifted beneath their feet, and strange sounds echoed in the distance. Jack couldn't help but feel like they were being watched, though he saw no signs of life other than the strange plants. As they neared the base of a mountain, Zira came to a sudden halt. Jack almost ran into her, barely managing to stop in time. "What is it?" he asked, his heart racing a little. Zira's sharp eyes scanned the area ahead. "I've detected something, a signal." She pulled out a small device from her belt and activated it. A small holographic map appeared in the air, showing the location of the signal. Jack leaned in, trying to make sense of the map, but it was all foreign to him. He didn't have the technical knowledge that Zira had. Still, he couldn't help but be impressed by how quickly she was able to pinpoint the source of the signal. "It's coming from the mountain," Zira said, her voice steady. "We need to get closer." Without waiting for a response, she started climbing up the rocky terrain, her movements precise and quick. Jack followed closely behind, doing his best to keep up with her, but the climb was steep, and the rocks were slippery. As they reached a narrow ledge near the top of the mountain, Zira paused. "We're close," she said softly, her voice almost reverent. "Whatever this is, it's powerful." Jack could feel his excitement growing. The air was thin at this height, and the view was breathtaking. The planet stretched out before him, its strange, glowing plants dotting the landscape. But despite the beauty, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was an energy here, something that felt both inviting and dangerous at the same time. Zira stood still for a moment, her eyes closed as if she were listening to something only she could hear. Jack watched her, feeling a strange sense of connection that he hadn't felt before. He was starting to realize that she wasn't just some cold, distant alien companion. There was something deeper within hers, something that made her more than just a professional partner. but Jack couldn't quite figure out what it was. Zira's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Come here." Jack walked over to where Zira was standing, looking down at a small, circular opening in the rock. The opening was covered with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. It seemed to pulse with energy. Zira bent down, her fingers gently tracing the symbols. "This is it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The source." Jack leaned in, feeling the pull of the strange power emanating from the opening. It was almost magnetic, like something was drawing him in, but Zira was already moving, pulling out a small device that she attached to the opening. With a soft, the device activated. The symbols began to shift. The ground beneath them trembled as the rock began to shift, revealing a hidden entrance. A dark, cold passageway stretched out before them. Zira stepped forward without hesitation, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Stay close," she said, her tone more serious than ever. Jack followed, his heart pounding. The passage was narrow and winding, the air heavy with an unfamiliar scent. The walls were smooth, almost too smooth, as though they had been carved by something far more advanced than anything Jack had ever seen. After a few moments, they reached a large, open chamber. The floor was lined with strange glowing crystals that cast eerie shadows on the walls. In the center of the chamber stood a massive machine, its purpose unclear. It hummed with power, sending out waves of energy that Jack could feel in his chest. Zira approached the machine, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "This is what we've been searching for. A power source beyond anything we could imagine." Jack felt a rush of excitement and fear. They had found it, the source of the energy readings, but there was something unsettling about the machine, something that made him uneasy. It was like it was waiting for something. Zira turned to him, her face serious. "We need to figure out how to shut it down." Jack nodded, but as he looked at her, he couldn't help but notice something different in her expression. For the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She wasn't the cold, unflappable Zira he had come to know. No, this was something else. This was a woman who had finally let down her guard, if only just a little. The chamber was filled with a low hum, the machine at the center glowing with an eerie light. Jack couldn't help but stare at it, a mixture of awe and fear settling over him. This was no ordinary power source. It was far beyond anything he had ever seen. The room seemed to pulse with energy like it was alive. Zira stood at the machine, her fingers flying over a series of glowing panels that appeared on its surface. Her expression was focused, intense. Jack watched her, still amazed by how quickly she had taken charge. She was always so calm, so in control. But now, there was something else in her eyes, a spark of curiosity and uncertainty that he had never seen before. "What do you think it is?" Jack asked, trying to break the silence. Zira didn't look up from the machine. "I'm not sure. This technology is ancient, older than anything in our records. It's not from any known species." Jack took a step closer, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of energy around them. Could it be dangerous? Zira paused, her fingers hovering over the controls. "It's possible. The energy readings we detected earlier were unstable. If we don't figure out how to shut it down, it could cause a chain reaction." Jack's heart raced. The last thing he wanted was to accidentally trigger something that could destroy the planet. But something about Zira's confidence made him feel like he wasn't completely alone in this. If they were in this together— "I'll help," Jack said, stepping forward. He wasn't sure what he could do, but he wanted to be involved. He couldn't stand on the sidelines, not anymore. Zira finally looked up, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, there was a flicker of something, a hint of appreciation, maybe. But it quickly disappeared, replaced by her usual calm expression. "Fine. You can assist me by activating the power down sequence," Zira said, gesturing to a panel beside the machine. "But you must be careful. Any mistake could cause the system to go into overload." Jack nodded, his hand slightly trembling as he moved to the panel. The symbols on the screen were alien, but he recognized the general layout. He had seen similar tech before on other planets. He pressed a button, and the machine responded with a soft beep. For a moment, nothing happened. Jack looked at Zira, who was still watching him closely. She had a look on her face, a combination of doubt and hope, as if she wasn't sure what to expect. Then the machine shifted. The light in the room flickered, and the hum grew louder. Jack's heart raced as the machine started to glow brighter, the energy in the room intensifying. "No, no, no," Zero exclaimed, her hands flying back to the controls. She tried to stop it, but it was too late. The power surged, and the walls of the chamber began to shake. The ground beneath him cracked open, sending a ripple of energy through the air. Jack stumbled, trying to keep his balance, but the tremors were getting stronger. "Zira, what's happening?" Jack shouted over the noise. "I don't know." Zira shouted back, her voice rising in panic. "The system is reacting to the energy spike. We need to get out of here now." Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed Zira's arm and pulled her toward the exit. They ran through the winding passage, the walls vibrating with the energy of the machine behind them. The ground beneath their feet seemed to crack open as they sprinted, the tremors growing stronger with every step. They reached the shuttle, and Jack quickly punched in the code to open the door. As soon as it slid open, they rushed inside, collapsing into their seats. Zira slammed the controls, her fingers moving with precision, her face pale with fear. "Hang on," she yelled as the shuttle's engines roared to life. They shot off the surface of the planet, narrowly avoiding a massive shockwave that erupted from the chamber they had just escaped. Jack looked out the window, his heart still pounding in his chest. The planet's surface was beginning to crumble, the ground splitting apart as the energy from the machine tore it apart. He had no idea how they had managed to escape, but they had. Zira was silent, her eyes focused on the controls. She didn't speak for a long time, as if processing what had just happened. Jack didn't say anything either, unsure of what to say. They had just narrowly avoided disaster, but Zira's calm exterior seemed to be hiding something else. "What was that? Machine?" Jack finally asked, breaking the silence. Zira took a deep breath, her gaze fixed ahead. "I'm not sure. It's a power source, but not like any I've encountered before. It could be from a civilization far older than the Talrith, maybe even older than any known species. So we don't know what it could do," Jack pressed. Zira's eyes softened for a moment, and Jack saw a hint of something deeper in her expression. It was fear, but not the kind of fear he had expected. "No, we don't, and that's why we need to return to the station. I need to analyze the data, figure out what went wrong. We can't leave this unchecked." Jack nodded, understanding. The weight of what she was saying, whatever that machine was, it wasn't just a simple power source. It was something far more dangerous. They had to figure out how to stop it before it caused more destruction. As the shuttle flew back to the station, Jack glanced over at Zira. She was still distant, her expression unreadable, but he knew one thing for sure. This mission was far from over. And now, more than ever, he felt like they were in this together, for better or for worse. The shuttle descended back toward the station, the engines humming softly as it glided through the atmosphere. Jack's heart was still racing from their close call. He couldn't shake the image of the crumbling planet, the shockwave that had nearly swallowed them whole. The memory of Zira's frantic movements and her usual calm face filled his mind. He glanced over at her, wondering what she was thinking. Zira was quiet, her focus entirely on the controls as the shuttle approached the docking bay. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes narrowed with concentration. But Jack noticed something in the way she held herself. There was tension in her shoulders, a tightness that hadn't been there before. For all her strength and composure, Jack could see she was shaken. They landed smoothly, the shuttle coming to a soft stop on the platform. Jack quickly unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, ready to get out. But as he turned to face Zira, he hesitated. She was still sitting there, her gaze locked on the controls in front of her. For a moment he wondered if she even realized they had landed. "Zira," Jack said softly, his voice breaking the silence. "We made it, but ... Are you okay?" Zira slowly turned her head toward him, her eyes meeting his for the first time since they had escaped the planet. There was a flicker of something in her gaze, something Jack couldn't quite place. It wasn't the usual calmness, the emotionless professionalism. This time her eyes seemed softer, as if she was letting her guard down for just a moment. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice quieter than usual. "Just ... processing." Jack nodded, unsure of what to say. He could tell she was trying to distance herself again, trying to go back to the way things were before. But there was something about her, something real and vulnerable that made Jack want to reach out to her, to help her in some way. They both stood in silence for a moment.
Ow.
The quiet hum of the shuttle, the only sound between them. Jack didn't want to push her, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that something had shifted between them. It wasn't just the mission or the danger they had faced. It was something more, something he couldn't explain. Then, as if sensing his thoughts, Zira finally stood up. She moved toward the shuttle door and pressed the button to open it. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and the cool air from the station rushed inside. Jack followed her out of the shuttle, his mind still spinning. They made their way through the docking bay, past the quiet corridors of the station. Zira moved. Quickly, her pace unhurried, but steady, as if nothing had changed. Jack walked beside her, his steps matching hers. But his thoughts were far from the calm exterior he was trying to maintain. As they walked, Jack couldn't help but glance at Zira every now and then. Her silver skin seemed to shimmer in the light of the station, and her eyes, those dark, mysterious eyes, were lost in thought. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words didn't come. It wasn't until they reached the station's control room that Zira finally spoke again. She turned to him, her face softening as she spoke. "We need to analyze the data," she said. "We need to understand what went wrong with the machine. If it's still unstable, we need to figure out how to shut it down permanently." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I'll help however I can." Zira didn't respond at first, but then, almost as if she was thinking aloud, she added, "It's strange, Jack. I've never encountered anything like that before. The power, the energy, it's almost as if it was calling to me."
"Hey, Jax."
Brow furrowed in confusion. "Calling to you? What do you mean?" Zira met his gaze, and for a moment there was something vulnerable in her eyes, something that made Jack's heart skip a beat. It wasn't fear, though. It was something else. It was like she was letting him see a side of her that she never showed anyone else. "I don't know," she whispered, almost to herself. Felt ... familiar, like I should have known what to do, but I didn't. Jack opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, Zira stepped closer to the control panel, her fingers dancing across the buttons with ease. The screen flickered to life, showing the data they had collected from the machine. Jack watched as Zira worked, her focus returning to the task at hand. But something had changed. There was a softness in the way she moved, a gentleness that wasn't there before. For a moment, Jack found himself staring at her, completely mesmerized by the way she seemed to glow in the dim light of the room. Her silver skin shimmered, and her dark eyes held a depth of emotion he hadn't seen until now. It was almost as if, in that brief instant, she was no longer the cold, distant alien he had come to know. She was something more, something real. Suddenly, without warning, Zira turned toward him, her expression completely different from before. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time since they had met, she smiled at him. It wasn't a professional smile, a smile born of politeness. It was something warmer, more genuine. Jack froze, his heart stopping for a brief moment. He had never seen Zira smile like that, and it was like a switch had flipped inside him. He wasn't just captivated by her appearance, he was captivated by her. The smile seemed to light up her entire face, making her look softer, more human. It was like a crack had formed in the walls she had built around herself. And Jack couldn't help but feel a rush of hope. Zira's smile lingered for a moment longer, and then she turned back to the control panel, her expression returning to its usual calm. But Jack couldn't shake the image of her smile from his mind. It was like a secret had been revealed, something she had kept hidden for so long. And for the first time, Jack felt like he wasn't just an observer in this mission. He was part of something bigger, something that might just change everything. The control room was silent as Zira continued to work, her fingers moving swiftly over the screen, analyzing the data. Jack stood beside her, watching her every move. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the screens around them. Despite the quiet, Jack felt a strange sense of urgency. They had barely escaped the planet, but the threat was far from over. Zira's brow furrowed as she examined the readings. Jack could see the concentration in her eyes, the way she leaned forward, as if the data held the key to something vital. "What do you think caused the machine to react like that?" Jack asked, his voice breaking the silence. Zira didn't look at him immediately. She just stared at the data, her expression unreadable. "I'm not sure," she said quietly, her voice softer than usual. "The power source. It was unlike anything I've encountered. But I felt something when I touched it. Pull, like it was calling me." Jack's stomach tightened. He had heard her mention that before, but now it seemed even more significant. "What do you mean it was calling you?" Zira finally turned her gaze to him, her dark eyes meeting his. There was a vulnerability in them, something raw and honest that Jack hadn't seen before. She took a slow breath, her fingers resting on the edge of the control panel. "The energy from the machine, it felt familiar to me, like I was meant to be there, like it was part of me," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a connection I've never felt before, and I don't know why." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The idea that the machine had some kind of pull on Zira was unsettling. It was as if it had awakened something in her, something that went deeper than just the mission. "Do you think this is connected to your species?" Jack asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. Zira hesitated, her eyes flicking back too. "The data on the screen. It's possible," she replied. "The Talrith have always been focused on logic and technology. But there are legends among my people, stories of a power that binds us all, a power that was lost long ago. It's possible the machine is connected to those legends." Jack didn't fully understand what Zira meant, but he could tell it was something important. The look in her eyes told him that this wasn't just a simple mission anymore. Something had changed, and it had to do with Zira herself. "Are you saying you think this machine is part of your people's past?" Jack asked, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Zira nodded slowly. "I don't know, but I need to find out. If this power really does connect to my people's history, it could change everything we know. And if we don't understand it, it could be dangerous." Jack looked at her, his mind racing. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. He had always known Zira was different, but now it seemed like there was even more to her than. He had realized she wasn't just a companion on a mission. She was connected to something much bigger, something ancient and powerful. And whatever it was pulling her in. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Jack asked, his voice gentle. He wanted to do more than just stand by. He wanted to be a part of this, to help Zira understand what was happening. Zira glanced at him, her eyes softening just for a moment. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I've never felt this way before. It's like a part of me is waking up, something I've never known. And I'm afraid of what it means." Jack's heart ached as he watched her. He could see the fear in her eyes, the fear she had always hidden so well. Zira had always been so composed, so in control. It was like the walls she had built around herself were beginning to crack, and Jack wasn't sure if he was ready for what was on the other side. "I'm here for you," Jack said softly. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." Zira met his gaze, and for a moment there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that almost looked like hope. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating expression he was used to. "Thank you," she said quietly. There was a distance in her voice, a barrier she was putting up again. It was like she didn't want to admit that she needed anyone, especially not him. Jack didn't push her. He knew she needed time, but he also knew that something had shifted between them. This mission had started with nothing but distant professionalism, but now it was more than that. Zira wasn't just his companion anymore. She was something more, something he couldn't fully understand, but wanted to. The silence stretched between them as they both turned back to the data. Zira continued to analyze the readings, but Jack could tell her mind was somewhere else. She was lost in thought, her fingers moving almost mechanically as she worked. The power in the data was undeniable, but it was more than just energy. It was something ancient, something that seemed to call to Zira in a way that made Jack uneasy. "We need to go back to the planet," Zira said suddenly, her voice firm again. "I need to understand what that machine is, and I need to do it quickly, before it becomes unstable again." Jack felt a sense of dread settle in his chest. "Are you sure it's safe to go back?" he asked. "After everything that happened?" Zira didn't look at him. "We don't have a choice," she said. "If we don't understand the power source, we risk everything. I can't just walk away from this, not when it's tied to my people's history." Jack took a deep breath. He knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. The danger wasn't over. It was just beginning. And whatever was happening to Zira, he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. But he had no choice. He had to stand by her. "We'll do it together," Jack said, his voice steady. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Zira didn't respond immediately, but when she did look at him, there was something different in her gaze. A flicker of appreciation, maybe even trust. It was a small thing, but it meant more to Jack than anything else. They weren't just teammates anymore. They were something more. And whatever they had to face next, they would do it side by side. The shuttle hummed steadily as it took off once again, its engines roaring to life, cutting through the stillness of space. Jack sat next to Zira, feeling the weight of the situation settle around him. They were heading back to the planet, too. The machine that had nearly destroyed everything. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that things were only going to get more complicated. But he also knew one thing: Zira needed him, even if she didn't want to admit it. Zira sat in silence, her eyes focused on the controls in front of her. The usual calmness had returned to her expression, but Jack could tell that underneath it all, something was changing. She had opened up to him in ways she never had before. And though she tried to keep a professional distance, Jack could see the cracks in her walls, the signs that she wasn't as cold and distant as she had once appeared. "Do you think we'll be able to fix it?" Jack asked, breaking the silence. Zira didn't look at him immediately. She seemed to be lost in thought, her fingers lightly touching the controls as she navigated the shuttle. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't know. I have to try. This power source, it's not just something I can walk away from. It's tied to my people's past. I need to understand it." Jack nodded, understanding the weight she carried. He couldn't imagine the pressure of holding on to something so important, something that could change everything. Zira wasn't just trying to save the planet or their mission. She was trying to understand who she was, where she came from, what this power meant for her people. The journey felt long, but Jack didn't mind. Every minute was a moment he could spend thinking about what was happening. He had always known this mission would be about more than just exploration, but now it felt personal. It wasn't just helping Zira for the sake of the mission. It was helping her for the sake of herself. The planet appeared ahead, a distant blue orb surrounded by wisps of cloud. As they entered the atmosphere, Jack could feel the shuttle's shaking increase, the turbulence rattling the walls. But Zira didn't flinch. She handled the controls with the same calm precision she always had. It was as if nothing could throw her off course. Nothing could break her focus. "Stay close," Zira said, her voice steady. "We don't know what we're walking into. The energy readings are unstable." Jack wasn't sure if she was warning him or herself, but he nodded. The fear was there, buried beneath her calm exterior, but it was there. It only made Jack want to stand by her even more. They weren't just teammates anymore. They were something more. They had become partners in this mission and in something deeper. They landed with a soft thud, the shuttle touching down on the rocky surface. Jack unbuckled his seatbelt and stood, his legs slightly unsteady from the rough landing. Zira was already out of her seat. Moving with determination toward the shuttle door, Jack followed closely behind, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about shutting down a machine anymore. It was about Zira's future, and possibly the future of her people, as they stepped out of the shuttle and onto the planet's surface. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The planet was beautiful in its own way. The bioluminescent plants shimmered in the dim light, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The air was heavy, almost thick with the energy that emanated from the ground. It felt alive, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Zira moved ahead, her steps confident, as if she already knew the path they needed to take. Jack followed, his thoughts racing. He wasn't sure what would happen once they reached the machine again. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to leave her side. They reached the entrance to the chamber. The ground cracked and jagged where the energy surge had caused the earth to tremble. The door was still there, but it was now covered in a layer of glowing symbols. Like a lock waiting to be unlocked, Zira approached the door, her fingers brushing over the symbols. Jack stood back, watching her. There was something almost reverent in the way she touched the markings, as if she was connecting with something far beyond him, far beyond the mission. "I've seen these symbols before," Zira said softly, almost to herself. "These are the markings of the Ancient Ones, the civilization that disappeared centuries ago." Jack frowned. "The ones you mentioned before? The ones from your people's legends?" Zira nodded, her expression distant. "Yes. The Talrith believed that the Ancient Ones had discovered a power greater than anything we've ever known. But they vanished before they could share their knowledge. These symbols are a part of their legacy." Jack couldn't help but be fascinated. "So this machine is connected to them?" Zira's gaze hardened as she nodded. "Yes. And that's why we need to understand it. If the Ancient Ones were able to harness this power, then my people could too. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "So we have to shut it down. For good." Zira turned to him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that took him by surprise. "We can't just shut it down. We need to understand it." "I need to understand it." Jack felt a pang in his chest. He could see how much this meant to Zira. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a chance to reconnect with her past, too. Find the truth about her people's history. And Jack knew that whatever happened, he would be there with her. This wasn't just about saving the planet or shutting down a dangerous machine. It was about Zero and about them. "Whatever happens, I'll be here," Jack said quietly. "You don't have to do this alone." Zero looked at him, her expression softening for the first time in a long while. She nodded slowly, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Thank you, Jack," she said, her voice barely a whisper. For the first time, Jack didn't feel like just a soldier on a mission. He felt like something more, something real. And he knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together.